Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, basketball fans. You're listening to the NTC podcast, episode 45. Believe it or not, it's been a few weeks since we've jumped on, but figured it was time to get back with you guys, have another podcast episode, dive into this very young NBA season. We're about 7 to 8 games through the campaign so far, so a lot of time to go, but obviously things ramp up very quickly in the NBA, so we wanted to dive into that here. Before we get into our content for today, I wanted to introduce Colin Maher, who is just joined the NTC team. He's going to be assisting us with articles, jumping on some podcast. He's going to be one of our Swiss Army knives, so to speak, just kind of helping out in a variety of areas. So, Colin, glad you're here with us, man. Glad to have you as part of the team, and thanks for offering your time for a nice little podcast episode. We're happy to have you, and should be an exciting conversation.
Absolutely, thank you guys so much. I'm so excited to join the team and contribute where I can, and look forward to it. Look forward to this podcast.
Oh yeah, I mean, as you'll see, we have a great time on these episodes, Colin. And
I've always listened, so I'm happy to jump in.
Nice. Well, that's what we want to hear. And then also, before we get started, a quick little shout out to Bet99 Sportsbook, who is the official betting partner of NTC. So they have partnered with us, and they have some great content over on their site. So if you go check out their website over at Bet99, they can get you hooked up if you're looking to get into the betting scene. It's really hot right now, obviously, with the NBA season in full swing. If you want to drop some money down on that, they can hook you up. So be sure to check out their website, and we greatly appreciate their partnership as we continue to grow this thing out. And we're looking to get our content on a variety of sources, websites, media outlets, all that good stuff. So we're happy to have them. Colin, I think it's about that time, man. We're going to get into a few topics here today. Very interesting developments here over the past few weeks. And this is why I really think it's vital that we settle into a rotation of 2 podcasts a week, because here in the NBA, I mean, if you tap into Shams and Woj's tweet notifications multiple times a day, you will see stuff come up. Ime Udoka, who we'll touch on here in a minute, tampering came up here not too long ago, injury updates. I mean, it's just full swing. Unrelated note, I don't know how they do it. I really don't know how they have any kind of social life, because pretty much
they do
like this. You know, your phone just glued to your phone 24/7. I don't understand it, but hey, that's why they get paid the big bucks, right?
Yeah, and that's before you even get into the basketball and how great of a season it's already been, and how surprising everything has been. I mean, we're all super excited going into the season, because there are just a wide range of contenders, and then all of a sudden, like we'll talk about here, there are so many teams that you think we're going to be tanking and falling apart and be at the bottom of the barrel, and it's super early on, but they're not. So we'll dive in there too, but before you even get to the basketball part of it, there's so much to talk to.
Absolutely, man. I mean, we're going to dive right into it, man. We're going to save the on-court for a little bit later. We're going to start off with a development that came about a couple of days ago. This is related to the 76ers. 76ers had a slow start. As we know, they've ramped it up in the past few games. They're looking a lot better. But this is related to their offseason. So as we know, they went out and made a strong push towards getting PJ Tucker, Daniel House. It's the Daryl Morey effect. He knew those guys from Houston. He loves their play. He brought them in. There's definitely that bias there, but clearly they've been good pickups. They fit exactly what Philly needed to a T. So, I mean, those are great pickups. However, it did cost them 2 second-round picks. As reported not too long ago, they lost their 2023 and 2024 second-round picks because of their free agency discussions that were premature. Now, Colin, I mean, this is what's interesting. Miami and Chicago were penalized last offseason for picking up Kyle Lowry, and then I think it was that sign-in trade where they brought in Lonzo Ball, were penalized because of their premature conversations. What's interesting is they lost 1 second-round pick from my memory. This was a 2 second-round pick situations. Now, I'm not sure if it's because there were 2 players they're tampering with, so it took away 2 picks. Yeah. But that's just something that stood out to me. I mean, what are your initial thoughts on this punishment handed down by the league to the Sixers organization?
Yeah, it's interesting. I think that you hit the nail on the head, that it's 2 players, so it's 2 second-round picks. And they found, wrongdoing on 2 separate occasions, and each one, and the precedent has been 2 second-round picks. But it's going to be interesting to see where this goes in the future as far as ongoing punishments and what the commissioner wants to do. And in my practice, so I'm a practicing attorney. So anytime I start looking at these things, what I do is I dive into the CBA and I dive into the league has a constitution that has bylaws. And what those do is it explains what the commissioner's power and what he's able to do. And it kind of explains these situations. And it's very quite open ended. And that's why you don't really kind of understand, why these decisions were made, and that's why you're asking that question: why this decision was made. I mean, it's very broad power. Once there's an insinuation that tampering may have taken place, what happens is an investigation takes place, and then he can do all sorts of different things. From back in the day, they almost didn't do anything. I read an article today from Sports Illustrated from back in 2019 that said that the toughest punishment that they ever gave out was a $500,000 fine to the Lakers. So I mean, a $500,000 fine is hilarious, right?
Especially since the Lakers. I mean, you
Right.
know they're not short on money.
Right. So now they're starting to really try to come down a little bit harder. Now, second round pick. Now, if you're talking to the 76ers, would you give up a second round pick for PJ Tucker
Every
and
time.
Jalen House? Of course.
Every time.
So, it's still almost worth it to tamper. So it'll be interesting to see where this goes, because what's really interesting about this is we know that other teams are tampering. When they fire off the reported signings immediately when it's legal,
it's widespread.
So you know that it's happening. And what's interesting is how is the commissioner determining what investigations to take place? Because in this specific situation, he outwardly said that no team requested that an investigation take place. So it's really interesting to see why he's investigating this one and not a lot of other ones. I know he's investigating the Jalen Brunson deal as well. I don't think that one's concluded yet. So it'll be interesting just to see how this continues to grow and season to season if they start coming down harder. Because I know that they even adopted harsher penalties available to him in the future, as far as they increased fines from 5 million to 10 million, even if he wants to levy harder fines. And he can even levy fines and suspensions against individual executives if he wants to. I think that would be a way to really hamper down if they wanted to, right? So it's just you got to lean on what if it's important to them and if it matters. So it's interesting if they care so much, why do they do so little? So it'll be interesting to see if they keep warning them and increase penalties, as they go along. It kind of reminds me of like the baseball cheating scandal. They kept increasing those penalties, right, until now people are getting suspended over seasons. So it'll be interesting.
That's a severe punishment, and I totally agree. I mean, it's almost like the league isn't really serious about this if they're only going to dole out second round pick penalties. Because here's the thing: the teams that tamper, they're probably in a position to acquire a player that can put them over the hump. We saw that with the Bulls and Heat last season. I mean, they were teams on the cusp of contention. So for them, losing a second round pick is of little consequence because of where they are in their development. So that really is an interesting development there. A little bit of context as far as Philadelphia's pick situation. If you guys haven't checked out our site before, notradeclause.com, we do have a draft pick tracker page on our site. So I manage that page and I keep track of how many first and second round picks each team has. So this puts Philly out all of their second round picks until 2027, believe it or not. And in 2027 and 28, those picks they could be on the move. It depends on a variety of factors. The 2027 one, it depends on what happens from 25 to 27. So if they don't convey a second round pick to OKC in those years, it converts to a second round pick and they'll lose that one. Their 2028 second round pick, that can also go to OKC. And I won't get into it here. You can check out our website for more information. But basically, if a bunch of things happen, they don't have a second round pick until literally 29, which didn't even become available to trade until this past draft this summer. Right. So you can see how this is going to affect them for a long time because they already had a gap between 25 and 7. Now those 23 and 24s are gone. So now they're almost completely out of all their seconds, unless, of course, they make a trade to acquire more. Going back to what you had mentioned about harsher penalties, that's something that Woj had reported also back on Monday was that the NBA and the Players Association are going to revisit the rules that punish teams for committing this act. To be honest, Colin, I think the only way to completely just really hammer down on these violations is to take away first round picks. If they do that, that will cleanse the slate, because these teams, first round picks, not necessarily that they want the pick so they can draft a player, because they're probably going to be late first if they're that good. It's the fact that they're not available as trade pieces. So if you want to make a move to get you over the top, acquire a star or a high level starter, you lose first round picks. That is a stiffer penalty that I think could make teams think twice. So what do you think about introducing that kind of penalty to stifle these tampering operations?
Yeah, I mean, it would certainly help deter any tampering problems. The problem that you're going to end up having is, right now, what they're able to do is say, we care, here's a punishment, and then it's only a second round pick, and everyone can kind of say, haha, people tampered, and it's not that big of a deal. If people start, sacrificing first round picks or having to forfeit first round picks, everyone's going to start having to dig in, and the media is going to start digging in and say, okay, then what actually happened? And they're going to want to learn what actually happened. What were the facts giving rise to this tampering, and what is the proof giving rise to this? And then it's going to be all kinds of, whether it was clear and convincing evidence. And I assume that there is. I don't think Adam Silver is, levying any kind of punishments without clear evidence that it existed, but that it occurred. But that's where it's gonna. I think when you're towing the line of forfeiting second round picks, you're able to do that without the media prying into the details of exactly what's going on in these tampering situations. Where once you start forfeiting up first round picks, the media and the fans are going to get angry, and they're going to want to know what's going on and who screwed up, really, right? Is what you're going to start thinking at that point. So, I mean, I think that the better thing to do is, if the executive, some executive had done it, that might be the way to do it. Even a $5,000 fine on an executive or a $10,000 fine on an executive might hurt them a little bit, you know what I mean, in the pocket, where they go, I don't, that's my vacation next summer. Maybe I don't want to be doing that. That might be a different way to do it. The other interesting thing that I don't believe that they've done this yet, but they have the ability to take those picks and transfer them to the team that was victimized as a result. So that would be really interesting too, even if it was a second round pick, but turn the knife just a little bit more and send it back to the team that you stole the player from. So that would be interesting too.
That would be interesting. I haven't thought about that part of it, but that definitely could be a deterrent. So I'm sure those are two possibilities that the league will look at, and hopefully they do something about this, because clearly what they're doing now isn't working. It's going to continue until these fines and other penalties get a little bit stiffer. So we'll have to see how that goes. But next is what we're talking about, controversy, man. I mean, you might as well transition over to Ime Udoka, because I mean, he's been just smack dab in the middle of all the controversy for about a month now since all that stuff came out. So I wanted to kind of defer to you on this, because I know you have a lot of thoughts on this, and your background allows you to have a certain perspective on this. That's a unique perspective, I believe. So, I mean, we know about what happened. We know the facts, at least that have been put out in the media. We know that the Nets essentially poached him up from the Celtics, which, I mean, I can't even believe we're saying this. I mean, going into the season, I mean, this is a coach that led a team to the finals.
Right.
Now he's in a different franchise. It's pretty crazy. So what insight have you gleaned from just reviewing the situation and just looking at it from the perspective of somebody that is, as you mentioned, in the law field, and you kind of review this stuff on a daily basis?
Yeah, I mean, it's really interesting, and it's really hard to give any specific opinion because what happens is there's not a lot of facts out there as far as what went on, what the suspension, the terms of the suspension, what's contained in his contract. So it's really hard to give any kind of opinion as far as what is going on. And, everyone is guessing and, having opinions as far as what the Nets are doing and what the Celtics are doing and who's screwing up what. And it's really hard to have any kind of legitimate opinion when no one's really disclosed anything, right? But the only thing that I really want to mention about this, the initial suspension, I believe, once the news broke that he was suspended for a year, and they believe that there is no intention that he was ever going to coach for the Celtics again. Everyone was asking, well, then why is he suspended and not fired? And the immediate thought is, well, you assume that they're trying to work out some type of buyout, so they don't fire him, and even if it's for cause under some type of morality provision in his contract, he's still going to try to claw back some of that money in court, right? So instead of trying to do that and deal with it in courts, what they're going to do is suspend him and then try to settle, work out a buyout provision at that point. So I think what had happened was that's what they were trying to work out, and then the Nets came along, fired Nash, and he had a new opportunity, so they're letting him go because now he might not even be asking for any money. They're probably just going to settle it. And that might again, I'm just guessing that throughout this entire thing, they have an NDA in place, a non-disclosure agreement. Both sides are just saying, look, while we're trying to figure all this out, or maybe for a long term, look, we're not going to disclose any facts of this because we're settling this and we're agreeing to move on. And the one thing that I really wanted to mention that I haven't seen get much attention in the media was, ironically, on Media Day, I heard Jason Tatum get interviewed, of course, about all of this, and he heard that he found out the same time that we all did about all this, but then he met with the team and the owner, Wick Grossback, and Brad Stevens afterwards, and he made a point that he basically knew what we knew, and the team didn't say, we're not going to disclose anything right now, we don't wish to. He said they weren't allowed to disclose any other information. So at that point, what I thought was either there's a legal proceeding going on, an investigation, or a non-disclosure agreement in place where and that's why they're not disclosing any of these things. So be interesting to see if anything leaks or if anything actually comes out, or at some point they legally can disclose anything that went on. So it'll be interesting, the fallout after all of this.
Absolutely. I mean, the fallout is immense. I mean, multiple franchises are involved in this. Multiple players. I mean, the coaching staffs. I mean, it's just a whole fiasco, which, I just can't believe we're even going through this. But it just goes to show you, in the blink of an eye, things can change in the NBA. I mean, this is a prime example. And we're going to have to see how this goes down. And I wonder how this locker room for the Nets is going to look once this guy comes in, because they're already in disarray. Right. And now you're adding this situation on top of that. That could be a bad mix. Yeah. So, I mean, that's something to consider.
That press conference is going to be interesting. I mean, I'm sure he's no questions are going to be answered, but just the uncomfortableness of it all is going to be. I mean, not to mention the Kyrie stuff going on too, which, we're talking about enough drama going on in the basketball in the NBA, but what a weird situation they have in Brooklyn right now.
I know this is a little bit off topic here, but Kyrie Irving specifically, I was watching a little bit of the game last night they had against Chicago.
Yeah.
He didn't score in the first half. He was 0 for 3. He only had 3 shots. He only played 13 minutes. I mean, I could just be reading too much into this. I almost felt like he was pouting on the court, if that's even possible. Mm-hmm. I mean, he was deferring shots all over the place. I mean, you can say he was just trying to move the ball, but I'm like, that's not Kyrie's game.
Right.
That didn't look like Kyrie Irving to me. It looked like he was trying to kind of send a message through his play on the court, because that's how Kyrie operates. He wants to send these subliminal messages, kind of, undercover and all that stuff. So that just really just stood out to me from last night's game, just the way he played. It was very interesting. So this team could really they could rally together. They could. They have some great players. They have, some guys that have done some great things in their careers, or I think it could just really just crash and burn even more than it is now with the introduction of Udoka. So
that's a great point that you make too, though, because who knows what's going on in Kyrie Irving's head. I mean, he might have just said, you know what, I only want to score 4 points and I'm not really going to try. And other than that game, him and Durant have been the ones scoring 30 plus and still losing,
Right.
right? So if he's in that world, I mean, talk about crashing and burning. You're absolutely right.
Oh boy. Yes, yes, indeed. We're going to see how that goes. That's
Yeah,
a whole pot of craziness right there.
yeah.
On a more positive note, we have some offseason pickups.
Mhm.
You have an extension in mind that you wanted to discuss, but there
Mhm.
are a few players here that have either just gotten paid over this or during the offseason, or they changed teams via trade or free agency signing that we wanted to highlight here real quick for you guys because they're making waves in the NBA due to their play through just a few games here so far. So, first one is a consensus that me and Colin came to last night when we were talking about possible names for this. This is a pretty obvious one. Lauri Markkanen has come in during the early part of this season and absolutely dominated. I mean, I'm extremely happy for him. He had a up and down tenure in Chicago. He started to find his groove in Cleveland, and he's building upon that in Utah. I mean, he's only 25 years old. He was the seventh pick in the 2017 draft, and it's only 8 games, small sample size alert, but 22 points a game, 9 boards, pretty much 3 assists, 50% from the field, only shooting 31% from three, which is surprising, but he's very efficient from the line at 84%. So, I mean, Markkanen's coming in and, he's a starter for this team as I figured he would be. He was a
Mhm.
centerpiece of the deal. He's coming in here and I think that was one of his weaknesses early on in his career was his aggressiveness. He came in, he wanted to be a stretch four. He has that skilled big man game, which is great to see. But sometimes you just really didn't know kind of where to pick his spots, a little bit tentative.
Mhm.
He's conquered that so far through a few games with the Jazz. He looks great. He looks confident. The shot inside the arc is very efficient. So he's not just leaning on the outside shot anymore. He's getting in a variety of ways. I mean, he's using his size to his advantage. He's playing hard. The entire team is playing hard for the Jazz. We're going to touch on this specifically here in a few minutes, but love what I'm seeing for Lauri Markkanen so far. He's getting on the boards. That was a weakness of his earlier in his career. He wasn't a huge board guy. I mean, he was low in the. I can't remember exactly what it was, but I mean, I want to say it was. Um, let's see what we have here. He was at about 7. He hit 9 in 18-19, but he was down to 6, 5 rebounds a game in Cleveland. Now he's
Mhm.
up back up to 9.3. So, I mean, just really getting on the boards, really assertive. And, he's had a great tenure so far. So, I mean, that's the reason why the Jazz are 6-2. I mean, they're not
Yeah.
folding, they're not laying down. And I think teams are being caught off guard. They expect the Jazz or the Spurs, like, hey, they're young, they're rebuilding, but they all have something to prove. And that equals a lot of great play and a lot of wins for guys that just want to get it done and just say, hey, you forgot about me, but I'm still here and I'm going to make my presence known. So um, that's Markkanen. That's his game. And it sounds like you have some similar opinions on what he's done so far.
Yeah, well, I just to add to that, great breakdown of everything he's got going on. You're absolutely right. And the interesting thing, you always have to consider when a player that's average on one team goes to a bad team and performs well, you just think, well, he's getting the ball more, and that's the reason his stats are up. But typically when that happens, they're losing, and he's just scoring garbage points and getting these garbage statistics. I mean, like you said, they're 6-2, and he's performing like this. So it's really impressive. He's leading this team. Like you said, they're fighting for these wins when no one thought that they would be where they are. Of course, it's very very early, but even if they start tanking or Danny decides to start trading guys off, it's great to see that you have these pieces to build around for the future. I mean, and the contract that you're looking at here for him looks like a no brainer. He's making 16 million this year, 17 in the 23-24 season, and then a non guaranteed after that. So he's locked in for 3 years for Utah if they want to keep him. I mean, what a great get, even if it was almost by accident. So
Yeah, that's a fantastic deal. I mean, I wasn't even thinking about the financial implications of bringing him in, but I mean,
right,
excellent contract. And I mean, I really think that's going to end up being a bargain. I mean, that along with Colin Sexton's contract
right,
extension he got, I think that can age very well for them.
yeah,
So they have a lot of options there. I mean, with Mike Conley, I think, winding down his career.
Mm-hmm.
That's going to open up space. Same with Jordan Clarkson, possibly be moving on via trade soon. Jazz are in a great spot, and don't want to get too much into their situation. There will be highlight here in a minute, but they have some great things going on here for sure.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. One of the other guys before we get to the extension, that's just so obvious to talk about is Donovan Mitchell. I mean, man, he's having basically an MVP year. I know it's early, but you're talking about a guy who is showing that he can be number one on a team. And they're getting Garland back tonight as we're speaking against the Celtics. So it'll be interesting how they incorporate him into the lineup and how Mitchell responds to that. I assume it's obviously for the better, but it'll be interesting to see how the chemistry works. But they've been extremely impressed. That whole team has been extremely impressive. When the trade first happened, I was high on it. I thought it was a great move for them to make because they at some point you have to make a move and get aggressive, and they have a good young team, and they have to do something at some point to make that next step and see if Donovan Mitchell can drive them to that next place. And man, right now it's looking good this early on in the season.
100%, Colin. And you did want to touch on an extension here. I mean, Anthony Simons with that $100 million extension.
Yeah,
a lot of eyebrows went up when that happened. But hey, listen, Damian Lillard is out for 1 to 2 weeks, and the door is open for Simons to really make some noise. So excited to see what he's got up his sleeve with the opportunity open up for him. I'm really excited to see what he's going to do because I have him on my fantasy team that we have at work, and I inserted him into the starting lineup for my team once I saw that Lillard was going to miss time. So I'm excited to see what's next for him. But yeah, do you have some more to touch on as far as his game goes?
Yeah, I mean, I just as far as everyone thinks about marketing and obviously the big splashes and the big trades, but I mean, this extension, like you said, everyone's eyes went up, but he's only 23 years old and he's already playing really well. I was looking at his stats. He already has more minutes played, more points per game, and three-point percentage is better than Jordan Poole right now, right? So, and on top of that, he's hit some clutch shots, and he already stepped up big with Lillard out the last game. I forget who they took on, and that's while winning games and being they're in first or second place in the West right now. So it's just something to 23-year-old. They have him locked in for another 4 years, and he'll be going right along with Damian Lillard as he ages out. Hopefully, they have to hope that Anthony Simons is just getting better and entering his prime. So it'll be interesting to see how that works out.
All right, guys. So we have one more topic on our agenda for tonight's podcast. That is two teams that are really making noise in the NBA so far with their quick starts. One of them, we gave a little bit of a spoiler earlier, the Utah Jazz off to a surprising 6-2 start as of tonight's recording, which is on November 2nd. They currently rank 15th in offense and 8th in defense, according to Basketball Reference. Interesting note from Basketball News, Mike Conley and Kelly Olynyk are tied for, I think, 4th in the league as far as catch and shoot percentage. Conley is 60%. Olynyk is 58% on catch and shoot threes. So it looks like one of the strengths of this team is their shooting. I think their other strength is just flying around the court, just being passed the entire game, as evidenced by their 8th defensive rating. And it's not like they're beating the Rockets and the Thunder every game. Right. I mean, they have beat the Rockets once, but the other wins are against the Timberwolves, the Pelicans, the Nuggets, and 2 wins in a row against the Grizzlies. And their last win was not even really close. It was 121-105, which gave them a 6-2 record. So quality wins against quality teams. I think that is kind of wear off a little bit once these teams kind of get an idea of how good Utah is. They do have weaknesses that can be exploited. I mean, they don't have the most talent. I think once these teams kind of get their footing, because, I mean, they beat the Pelicans. I mean, they've been banged up. They beat the Timberwolves. Their offense is a train wreck right now with the Twin Towers and trying to figure that out. The Nuggets had a very slow start to the season because they're implementing Jamal Murray and MPJ back to the rotation. So I think that the magic is going to wear off. management is not going to they're not going to stand for this. They're not going to stand for all this winning. So moves made both as far as the rotation and their entire roster will change. So I mean, but hey, I love the vibes from Utah, and I mean, I think they're having a lot of fun playing ball. Honestly, even last year, I mean, they had a great team, but like I don't know how much joy there was in their basketball, just with Mitchell's situation and Gobert and their butting heads and all the pressure that was on them. No more pressure. No one expects anything from them. So they just come out here and they play free. They play together, which you love to see. And that's a common denominator between both of these teams. They play together. They do a lot of passing. They hustle. They lock down defense throughout the game, and that's what's given them a quick start. So love what I'm seeing from these two teams. Anything to add on your end, Colin, as far as the Jazz go?
Yeah, I mean, one major asset that is really promising for them that that they're not going to get rid of is Will Hardy, right? I mean that's where Danny Ainge has got to be looking and extremely excited to see what he's been able to do with these guys and say, okay, I got my guy for as we build this team up, kind of what he did with Brad Stevens, right? So that's really interesting, and like you said. Man, the way that they beat it's the chicken or the egg, right? When they're beating teams like the Nuggets, Wolves, Pelicans, and the Grizzlies twice, and they're all kind of sputtering while they're getting started. Well, is it the Jazz, because the Jazz are good and beating them, or is it because these teams just haven't caught their footing yet? So, like you said, I'm sure they'll come back to earth. When teams start actually trying, when they get their footing, and when they get film on this team. It's a brand new team essentially, right? That they've never seen play together before. So once they get film on them and they realize, Olynyk's actually hitting his shots, and how to defend the catch and shoot against Olynyk and Conley, they'll come back to earth. But it is exciting to watch. I'd love to see it continue. Like I said, the season was super exciting going into it because there are so many contenders, and it's exciting when you have these teams that you didn't expect performing well early in the season.
For sure. One of my favorite things to watch during a season is like how these young guys really perform, especially when they get a fresh start on a new team. As we know, when you get drafted, your situation is everything. If you end up in the wrong franchise, it doesn't fit your skill set, the coaching staff isn't quite what you need. You can have a rough start, even though you're a talented player. What we're seeing here is guys like Malik Beasley come on the scene. He's 25, almost 26. Vanderbilt at 23 years old. Colin Sexton at 23. Horton Tucker is only 21. I feel like he's been in the league for like 5 years. I don't know why.
Yeah.
But I mean, he's only 21. He's going to be 22 pretty soon. Walker Kessler just got drafted. He's 21. Akbaji, rookie, 22. Alexander Walker is 24. People forget about him. He's a scoring guard that can do some damage. So they have a lot of unproven players in the sense that I don't think they found their best game yet. Markkanen is getting there. He is starting to figure that out. But for these other guys, they're really still trying to find themselves, like the best version of themselves. I think Will Hardy has empowered these guys to do just that. Just come out here, play to your strengths, play fast, play free, get a lot of shots up, a lot of threes, and it's paying off in a big way. So, I mean, kudos to the coaching staff. Really love how these guys are progressing. I think they're all going to have great careers. But I do like the slight veteran presence that still exists on this team with Jordan Clarkson, Olynyk, Rudy Gay, and Mike Conley are still on the roster. I don't know for how long, but they're still here making an impact, kind of showing these guys how the game is played. So I love that. Love the culture, love the vibes. Hopefully it goes for a little bit longer. Probably not too much longer, especially when we get to like the All-Star break, and they really need to kind of slow this roll down. But I mean, they're doing great things so far. So you love to see it.
Yeah, and if anything, what you're doing is you're displaying for the veterans as trade chips as you continue on in the season, and then with your younger guys, they're basically trying out to be those role players or even significant players. Like if Markkanen can make that step as you do build and find the real star elite players that you need to become a contender again.
100%, man. And it's it's contagious. Like when one person starts moving the ball, one person's really committed to the team and not just their own numbers, it really shines in the win-loss column. San Antonio, it's a similar story. I mean, they're 5-2. They flipped the script a little bit. I mean, their defense isn't as strong as Utah's at 22nd overall, but their offense is 11th. They're almost top 10 in offense through 7 games. The MVP of this team so far is got to be Keldon Johnson.
Yeah.
I knew it. I just knew going into this season, I mean, this was going to be a big jump for him. He just got an extension on his contract, well-deserved. And, he's averaging 23, 5, and 4 through these games, 45 from the field, 43 from 3, 80% from the line. He does a lot of damage in the paint. He's an old school player. He loves to just get inside and really throw his weight around, which I love to see. First 7 opponents. They lost to the Hornets by 27. I was worried. I was very worried at that time because Charlotte's not that strong of a team. So I saw that and I was like, oh boy, I mean, they're in for a long season. Yep. Yeah. And then they just go right off 3 straight wins against the Pacers, Sixers, and Timberwolves. The Pacers was a close win. Sixers was pretty close. They went against the Timberwolves. They lose the second Timberwolves game. They went against the Bulls, and they played the Timberwolves a 3rd time in a week, and they beat them 2 out of 3 times.
Yeah.
So
how have they faced the Wolves 3 times already? In what?
In
games?
Between the 24th and 30th, they played them 3 times.
That's a strange scheduling situation there, but
it's the NBA really wants to cut down on travel, so they're just blocking these games together where they have one opponent.
They are doing the home and homes. I know that.
Yeah, but home and homes. Because you'll see that a lot. You'll see a back-to-back set, home and home. You might even see 2 straight games at a team's arena. I mean, they play the Timberwolves on a Monday, Wednesday. Both were in Minnesota. So, I mean, they're really trying to cut down the travel, which I like. It's almost like a baseball vibe where you have the series played together. It kind of feels like that, which, it's a cool thing. I like it.
I agree because there'll be, more games. They'll be fresher because they didn't have to travel. And you kind of build up a story from that first game to that next game, and if, got a little chippy that first game, we'll see what happens in that second game. So I love that.
Yep.
It seems like a no-brainer. I don't know why they wouldn't do that, before.
Yeah, I mean, it makes a ton of sense when you're just really trying to get these guys, because we know what happens in the NBA these days. I mean, rest management is all the rage.
Right.
You see players take it really easy. The coaching staffs are very conservative when it comes to these guys' health. So if whatever you can do to alleviate that, whatever you can do to give these guys a better chance of taking the court every night, it's definitely a win. And what's even better is if you have this back-to-back set, and let's say you have a Zach LaVine, he's not playing back-to-backs, just as an example. So it's team management. So if he doesn't play the first game, you're on the road, Timberwolves fans are like, hey, we didn't get to see Zach LaVine. He's one of my favorite players. Second opportunity. Hey, he might play that second game, coming out of it. Maybe it's a Kawhi situation. Maybe it's an Embiid situation. Great players that you want to see play when they come to your town, but maybe they can't play one of the 2 games, so it gives you another opportunity. So another part of that equation that I really like.
Yeah, that's a great point. But yeah, going back to these Spurs, it is interesting to see. And again, it's interesting to see how important the coach is on these teams. And when you look back at the Steve Nash firing and how much of an effect he was on that team, and Will Hardy in Utah now, and obviously we know what Pop can do and what he's doing with these guys. And the other thing I wanted to say, you talked about how great Keldon Johnson has been, and I thought the same thing, that he might make a big jump this year. When you look at his extension, man, if he keeps this up, what a steal that is. I mean, his next year he's going to make $20 million, and it goes down after that every year. So he's going to be under $20 million through, and then he signed through the 2026-2027 season. But what's even crazier about their financial situation is their highest paid player. Now he'll be $20 million next year, but their highest paid player this year is $13 million. That's just unbelievable. There's only 2 players above $10 million. Everyone else is under $10 million on this team.
Unreal.
And they're performing like this. I mean, They have no one else locked in, I don't believe, after the 2023 season other than Keldon Johnson.
Very interesting. And it kind of shows you they're trying to keep the cupboard bare, just keep things very clean, give themselves a lot of options. They could take back a lot of money in trades. So if they're trying to get some picks back in return and they take back a guy that's making $30 million on an expiring deal, I mean, they have the funds to do that because they're so low when it comes to their overall team salary.
Right.
So, I mean, you can see their strategy here and it makes a ton of sense. But, man, that contract really is a bargain for Keldon.
Yeah.
And I don't know if it was the Spurs broadcast I was watching. So one of the commentators were talking about the Spurs as a team, and they said they have no all-stars, they have no superstars. And I'm like, that's true. But if we look at Keldon Johnson's game and he's playing like this, at worst, I mean, he's in consideration for an all-star team.
Yeah.
So, I mean, they have a guy that they can lean on.
He's a budding superstar.
Right, for sure. Mm-hmm. And you can just see it. I mean, over the years, he's gone from like a straight-up just rim attacker to developing that three-point game. His handle's gotten better. He's picking his spots better. So, I mean, it makes a lot of sense for Keldon Johnson. And then I would say the runner-up for the Spurs MVP award so far would be Devin Vassell. Mm-hmm. And I had the same vibes about him as I did Keldon going into the season because it's like, hey, after Keldon, it's you. Like, you're the next in line to get the shots, get the opportunity. And I watched him in preseason, and I can't remember the opponent, but I just saw him just look so calm. That shot is so smooth.
Yeah.
Mid-range from three, the fadeaways. I could just see the confidence, and I knew he was going to do something special. Unfortunately, he's hurt right now. He's out for the Spurs along with Keldon. They're both hurt, so here comes the tank.
Right.
But he's had some strong play too. Devin Vassell as well in his third season. I think he's going to be that second guy that ends up being extended past 2023 with Keldon Johnson here, probably this coming summer. If he keeps his play up. So that's definitely on the horizon based on his play so far.
Yeah, and that's the thing with these guys. They're all so young. Similar to Utah, they have a lot more veterans, right? But with these Spurs, it's all tryouts to see who's going to be there for the next contract, which is awesome. So it's going to be really interesting to see where that goes. I do have a question for you. Between these two teams, who is going to be better in the standings, and do you think either team will make even the play-in tournament?
That's a good question. I would say maybe just because Utah has more veteran presence, they'll end up a little bit better in the standings. I know that can change here in a hurry if they make trades, but as of today, with Rudy Gay there, with Jordan Clarkson, they're too good to fall all the way to the bottom. As we're with the Spurs, especially if you have a situation like currently where Keldon Johnson is hurt and Devin Vassell is hurt, that they can fall very quickly. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if they lost 2-3 games in a row just because they lost their two best options, and especially if their schedule gets tough here coming up. So I would say that the Utah finishes a few wins ahead of the Spurs, still in the bottom rung of the league, just a little bit better. And then I don't see either of them in the play-in tournament. I think the play-in tournament is going to be teams like Portland, teams like Sacramento, potentially, and then maybe the 10th seed or so. I would have teams like that over both of these teams. I think they're going to be no better than 13th in the conference, just based on the teams above them and then what these teams are trying to accomplish this season and going into the summertime.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think I'm with you, especially comparing the two teams. I just think if the roster stays as it is, Utah has that veteran presence. I think they're deeper as it stands right now. You know, like you said, if the Spurs lose one of those guys for a couple games, there's just not much else that they can do. I do think that Utah, if the team sticks together, which it probably won't, I think they could sneak into that 10 seed. We'll see. But yeah, it's tough in the West. The West is just there's just so many teams. There's so many budding teams. There's so many elite teams. It's just a deep conference this year. So it'll be interesting to see how it all shakes out.
For sure.
Yeah.
So, Colin, I think that brings us to the conclusion of our conversation this evening. But I want to thank you again for hopping on for your first episode. For your rookie campaign, I think you were great. Had a great introduction here. So keep it up, and love the unique perspective that you bring with your law background. I think that's going to be highly highly beneficial to NCC as a whole. So thank you for that, and best of luck with whatever you got going forward. Glad to have you here.
Thanks, man. I appreciate it. Look forward to doing it again soon.
Oh, yeah. And then lastly, just want to let you guys know about our website, notradeclause.com. Colin's going to be active on there, helping us out with cap sheets, dropping articles. I'm going to be updating the draft pick page on there, just making sure that everybody has accurate information as far as what picks they have. Transaction log is up there. We're going to get that updated. I mean, there's a ton of resources on this website that we want to let you guys know about. So we're active on Instagram. Our guy Ali drops graphics all the time. So we're really just trying to get this to be one of the best resources in the sports world as far as this information. So be sure to check out that website there, notradeclause.com, on the banner if you're watching this live. And, we're going to be updating that throughout the season. So stay tuned for another podcast. We're going to try to get another one up this week, and 2 per week throughout the season. Because as I mentioned earlier, you miss a day, I mean, you miss all kinds of news stories. So got to stay on top of it. Yep.
Something will be happening in Brooklyn.
Right. I mean, tomorrow, it could be like the whole team blows up, like everybody wants out. Who knows? Yep. But thanks so much, guys, for tuning in. We'll see you. Hope to see you on the next installment of NTC. And for checking out games tonight, enjoy the schedule, enjoy the slate, and we'll catch you on the next one. Take care.